Hello, welcome back to the James Ramblin' Reviews. So last week I reviewed The Hobbit and I talked about that, and that was the kicking off point of the Tolkien Middle Earth returning back to form with the whole Lord of the Rings related kind of thing. So that was The Hobbit, but the Silmarillion is what we'll be touching on today. This book right here. So the Silmarillion it wasn't actually it wasn't all just J.R. Tolkien. It was his son Christopher Tolkien, because if you think about it, like, Tolkien died 49 years ago, so like it doesn't make sense, because this book came out in 1977 and Tolkien died 50 years ago, and 1977 was not 49 years ago. So that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So that's kind of reason why it's not entirely Tolkien, but like, on with that, right? To lead that in there. So the Silmarillion is actually a prequel, a precursor, a prelude, whatever you want to call it, to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And I've got to say that I don't actually understand this book a lot. Right, I do think it's interesting to see how the context builds and how you get to understand everything, like the elves and that stuff. But as a whole, I didn't actually understand the book itself. I watched a video on it just to understand it. But it's just history. It's like a history novel of basically Middle Earth, and that's kind of what it is. My thoughts on it, yeah, I just think it's like, it is good, it's interesting, but I just don't know that much about it, because the Silmarillion is one of those things where it's kind of like you don't really, in my opinion, I don't really know much about it, because unlike the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, this never received a giant movie trilogy or anything like that. I think it's to do with how it's kind of hard to adapt this, because there's like a lot of unknown characters, and there's actually Morgoth in it as well, which is, there's like the Valar and there's the Silmarils and all that. They're like characters, and there's actually a lot of different characters and a lot of different stories, and it's a collection of stories as well. So it's history, collection of stories, understanding things. So it's kind of hard to just get all of that adapted into a movie trilogy. That's probably why we're getting like Rings of Power instead of the Silmarillion as a movie trilogy or a show, and the reason why that stuff. So that's my thoughts on the Silmarillion. But it is, I do think like, I think the story, yeah, it's just really interesting how it is, and the way it's structured and how you see the characters. So you don't really, and if you're wondering why it's like, the reason why, it isn't, yeah, it's just that's what I was saying there. It's like, it's kind of hard if you don't understand, if you don't really know too much about the early stages of Middle Earth, and you never looked into it before. It's going to be hard to get into this. So this book is going to be really hard to get into, because it's not as well known. I wouldn't like, it's still created by one of the most iconic, I guess you could say, novelists, and it's edited by that novelist's son. But it's like, it is nowhere. I don't think it's nowhere near. It's nowhere near as like popular as Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, to be honest, because it's obviously, like I said, it's not received this giant big adaptation to the story and the canon and the lore. But this is kind of where the Lord of the Rings and all that came from. This is where it came from. That is kind of it. But I just think also, actually, yeah, so that's it, right? But actually, I noticed that it kind of does actually go on further, and it shows you about the fall of Numenor, which is a completely different story, and it's like a different novel, and I think that's coming out in November. I think it's like a different version, or it's actually the actual thing, but it's coming out in November, so I might review that. But I actually don't know where else to take this video, because I've explained what it is, right? But it is actually one of the most like unknown pieces of Tolkien of Middle Earth. I know it is like the context and it's the history and it's that stuff. But yeah, as I was saying, yeah, I keep saying that, but that's kind of my thoughts there because that's what I thought comes to mind because it's not actually as well known as Lord of the Rings and the as Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. So yeah, that's I think I think I'll just leave it there because I don't really know what else to say about it. Yeah, and it does. Yeah, and there is that stuff with the high elves on the back and Fëanor Morgoth. I'm just looking at the back here. That's it there, but yeah, it's just it's if you don't know, if you have no idea what the Silmarillion is, you want to get into Tolkien. I do recommend it if you want to understand if you want to understand Middle Earth, but I I'm sorry if you're a person who's like really into the Silmarillion, I can't really offer you too much because this is the one thing I don't really know too much about. So I'm gonna end it there before it gets too long. So yeah, see you for Unfinished Tales. Bye.